that is an ultimate truth. And if we can stop fighting about, oh, you have to do it one way or another, we can start getting together and actually coming up with things that are useful instead of yelling at each other and disagreeing over things that are such ancillary issues. Hi, this is Teresa Yanaros at Divine Frequency. Thank you guys so much for the outpouring of support from the video last week. And as you guys know, I just started writing my second book, the sequel to What is Magic. If you haven't read the first one, go on down there, you can pick it up. But I have to tell you guys, I am really kind of nervous about this video because I have so much to cover and so many different things that I want to say. And I just don't know how really to make this video, because as I've started to write this second book, the realizations I'm having are just so compounded that I don't know how to funnel this into one video. So I'm going to do my best to try. So as I started writing the second book, I am going into the discussion of channeling. And the reason why I bring this up is because in my life, as you guys know, if you've watched Divine Frequency, I have had lots of circumstances where I have received information, and I'm trying to figure out what that means and what to do with it. And I have looked at so many different belief systems and trying to understand like what's going on and to try to bring that information to you guys so we can have that conversation. And I'm interested in y'all's thoughts. But I'm just going to give a brief anecdote so we can use that as a driving force of this conversation. When I was 18 years old, my cousin who was 18 years old died of a drug overdose. And when I went to his funeral afterwards, I was sitting at his piano. Before that, I didn't play piano. I mean, I could play like Heart and Soul, you know, the songs everybody can play. But then I felt his presence, and all of a sudden it was unlocked and I could play piano. I started playing this song. And from that point forward, piano was a huge part of what I did to cope with, you know, things in my life, stress. That's how I channeled energy through, you know, my creativity and stuff like that. So that happened. And then that night I was sleeping in his bed. And then I remember waking up at like 3 a.m. and I just opened my eyes. I'm looking around his room, and, you know, he had just died like 4 or 5 days prior. And I just felt this urge to go into the kitchen. And this was the day, like this was right after I had downloaded piano. I go into the kitchen and I look at the clock, and it's 3:16 in the morning. And I remember as soon as I looked at the clock, I heard his voice in my head saying, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only son so that others might not perish but have eternal life." It was John 3:16. And I remember like feeling tears run down my cheeks, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it was the first time that I had cried. Like usually when, you know, trauma and things like that happen for me, I go into caretaking mode. I don't start crying or like think about my emotions. That usually comes later. But it was like at that moment it sort of like released, and I just felt like he was okay. And anyway, going from that, like you think of like people from beyond the veil. Like I wanted to talk about the veil because we are supernatural beings that come in to live this physical experience, and we are souls connected to God in this time, and there are spirits that have passed and they can communicate with us. That's a true thing that is across all belief systems. That's theological. You can pull that out of Bible doctrine, you can pull it out of non-Bible doctrine. I mean, it's just a reality. But then the question becomes like, what about some of these other beings that might communicate with us? Or what about some of this other information that you might receive? Like after that, I started getting other pieces of information about other things not related. You know, it's just what it comes down to is that we live in a supernatural world. I mean, I've read The Supernatural Worldview by Chris Putnam. This is a great book. There's The Unseen Realm. This is also a great book. These are Christian perspectives on the unseen realm. Then we have something like Becoming Supernatural, right? And this is written by Joe Dispenza, and it's not written from a Christian perspective. But the reality is that we have these abilities as humans to connect beyond the veil. Something that's been really hard for me in the last year and a half has been approaching this concept of, what if this is evil? What if this communication is demonic? Is this bad? Is it good? Like all these questions that you just don't know the answer to. And I've been, you know, going back and forth on this stuff for a while. And I just want to make sure that I'm not being deceived or misled or whatever. And it's just been so overwhelming and it's frustrating because as I've started to write this book, I'm having this realization that I think that I have incorrectly assigned the majority of my experiences as bad or, doing something wrong when really it's a gray area. And a lot of this stuff, I just don't know. And something that really hit me hard, I was reading this book, Becoming Supernatural, and he's talking about science of the human body and basically how we have an electromagnetic field around us, et cetera, et cetera. And he's using EEG charts, graphs, all that kind of stuff, whatever. And what's frustrating is that the stuff he's talking about is stuff that I was quote unquote channeling, whatever word you want to call it. I'm so tired of like these words that we have hang-ups on, but I was receiving images and packages of information that I would write down, and it's associated to exactly what he's talking about. Now my question becomes, is this evil? How can it be evil if I'm getting some information that's actually true? Like what? Okay, maybe you can say, well, the means through which you got it was evil, but it's like, I'm telling you guys, this week has been so frustrating for me because as I'm coming into this information, I'm researching across the board. People are saying the same things depending on, it doesn't matter what belief system that they have. They're saying the same things, but then saying that the other person is evil. I'm just fed up with this duality and people just wanting to act like they're right, the other people are wrong, but they're saying the exact same thing. On Twitter the other day, I saw a bunch of Catholics saying that Protestants were evil and going to hell. And then I went and I actually commented on the thread and asked them, like, what is it about the Protestants that you think is evil? And the responses that I was getting, I'm just like facepalm. It's so annoying. I'm so fed up with this us versus them mentality when the majority of everything I'm finding, it's this undercurrent of truth that everyone's saying the same exact thing, but if you have this belief system, that makes you evil and going to hell. Okay, I just have to clear the air. There's so much noise around these topics, and I'm just so frustrated by it. Like, okay, in the beginning of the second book, I start writing about when I went on the train and I received this image of the divine frequency. I gained that vision out of going into like a meditation that I learned in this book, How to Meet and Work with Spirit Guides. I bought this book again. I've recently thrown it away, or not recently, like a year and a half ago, thrown it away. I've rebought it because I'm taking quotes from it for my book. It's educational. You see what I'm saying? Then I'm in my room writing this part in the book and I'm going like, was that evil of me to go into this trance and gain information? Does that open me up to evil realms where I can be deceived? Sure, maybe, right? Then I go and I look at my bookshelf and I see this book I hadn't seen in a long time, Saint Michael and the Archangels. This is written from a Catholic perspective. And it's talking basically about the exact same thing that you read in this book, which is clearly not Christian. This is Catholic. And they're talking about guardian angels, how each person is assigned a quote unquote spirit guide or guardian angel. The words that they're using are just slightly different. Not to mention, the Catholic perspective is that Christians and non-Christians alike receive guardian angels and can communicate with them. It's so frustrating how over time we use different words to describe the same thing, and that's what creates these arguments where we're literally saying the exact same thing. And I'm just so annoyed. It makes my head spin. I'm sitting over here going like, all right, you've got a book, Real Magic, which is written clearly from a non-Christian perspective, but it's just talking about science, really, and it's not even really supernatural. This is just talking about, this is, again, the difference between paranormal and supernatural. We have human abilities that we are starting to be able to finally test and gain research on, so it comes out of paranormal, it just becomes normal. But then you have the concept of supernatural. This is beyond the veil. This is, spiritual contact that we're having from the other side. Now, there's this gray area where when you go into meditative states or you're, having a dream or just living your life and then you just receive out of nowhere a package of information, it's coming from some, supernatural force or not, or what? What is that? And anyway, I just want to start this conversation because as we try to penetrate into these areas, like I am so tired of this shit slinging where it's like you say one thing, you say it using words that someone just doesn't understand or they feel like you're evil for it. And it's just like, I don't even know. It's like, I don't understand why we can't just realize that the truth here is unity. It's a unified truth. It's a unified consciousness. We are all connected. I've talked to Christians about the idea that we're all connected, and they disagree with me. They will literally not be able to understand what I'm saying. They're like, how can you say that humans are connected? And I'm like, how can you say they're not? Like, there are some Christians that actually believe that because they believe in Jesus in a certain type of way, that they're not actually connected to other humans because they're a new being and other people aren't. And I think that this idea of believing in Jesus itself has been morphed by different belief structures into meaning different things. And for me, I see the unified underlying truth where when we talk about Jesus, we talk about the Christ, we're talking about the Logos, the preeminent one that undergirds reality, that holds things together, that holds everything together. It's this universal Christ. And he was manifest as a human at that time. But Jesus lived long before. When you take the word Jesus, which I know is a trigger to a lot of people, but if you take that down into the metaphysical property of what that is, it is the Logos, it is God, and it is the source of all creation. And when we can take out all of this noise and this oh, you're going to hell if this, and you have to believe exactly this, otherwise this, you're not going to get anywhere when you come at someone with fear, telling them that you have to believe this or you're going to hell. It completely loses the opportunity for people to actually connect and anchor to the truth, which is the love that we have from our Creator. We're connected to our Creator. We're here in this physical world having a physical experience, but we are connected in a supernatural way. And that's why we have these things like receiving packages of information and stuff like that. So when I look at my past and previously I was so traumatized that I thought it was all evil, and I'm going back and I'm going through this exercise of having to look at all this information again. I'm going, this isn't evil. I wasn't evil. This was not evil communication. These weren't demons. This is happening to me. It's not just happening to me, it's happening to a lot of us. We're all trying to make sense of this, and it's so frustrating. A lot of us that were raised, fundamentalist Christian or whatever that looks like, we come out on the other end, we're looking for answers, and then you have these angry people who want to tell you that you're evil, which is not true. There are Christians and non-Christians alike having all of these experiences. And I think that the truth of what we're trying to connect to, it's all the same. It's all connected. And it doesn't matter what you were raised or who you are now. There's a level of connection to God that you have, that when you accept that and you have faith in your connection to God, that's what changes you into this new being. And what is that new being? It's your authentic self. The false self, when you shuck that off, that is the sinful nature. That is what you reject and you transmute. You don't really reject it. Oh, I guess, how would I even say that? You reject it. You decide that that's not who you really are. And then you go down into this womb, and then you are created into this new being. And that's when you connect to that always. It's a constant choice that you're living. You're going into that quantum state and you're saying, no, I shuck off all that is not me and I become all that is. That's what quantum consciousness is. That is what Christ consciousness is. And even Christians that hear the word Christ consciousness, they freak out because they think it's some new age thing that bastardizes the belief in Jesus Christ. Okay, in the way that they're saying it. But I think there are so many people that actually are Christians truly because they on a DNA level appreciate and respect and agree with and don't deny, but envelop and believe in and have faith in our connection to God, our tethering to God. We are the hands of God, and we are the branches of the vine. That is Christ. And that is an ultimate truth. And if we can stop fighting about, oh, you have to do it one way or another, we can start getting together and actually coming up with things that are useful instead of yelling at each other and disagreeing over things that are such ancillary issues. It makes me sick to look at some of these Christians who their highest goal is to quote unquote bring people to Christ, but they're sitting there arguing with each other over tertiary issues that have absolutely nothing to do with the underlying truth of making people saved or saving people. What is saving people? It's awakening people up to the realization that they are their authentic selves, that they aren't the false self, that they're not that ego construct, that lie that they think they are, breaking that down and being forced to look at who they truly are in Christ, in God. They're tethering to God. That's what's going on right now. And in 2020, as we're going through this intense spiritual alchemy, people are having to stop. They're realizing that they're not their false selves because they're not at work. They're not in this unconscious programming that they've been in for a long, long time. It's cutting that off, and it's forcing them to stop and become consciously aware of what they're creating. And in that, it's making them realize, wait a second, this unconscious ego thing that I've been feeding forever, it's not actually who I am. And they're waking up to who they are. People are going through this in a new way right now because everything is coming to a screeching halt. So I think that we need to have this conversation so that we can be really, really open and sponge-like as we're moving forward, and we're going like, who am I? And who am I in relation to others? What am I creating, and what's the reflection I'm getting back? And how can I improve this in a way that connects me more to Christ, that connects me more to God, to Source, whatever that is that looks like for you. It's the same. It looks the same for us. We might be using different words to describe it, but we're all trying to do the same thing here. And if we can appreciate that we're all trying to do the same thing, then we can love each other. And that is the key here. If we stop pointing fingers and trying to judge each other, judgment is not love. It's the opposite. Okay. You can't sit here and criticize and judge and point fingers and slam and hate when you need to be doing the opposite, right? That each of us needs to get that and pull away from the sinful nature, the false self, the ego self that wants to judge and point fingers at others, and realize that we have this beautiful opportunity to turn that around and actually be that endless well, open up that well, let that Holy Spirit flow through us so that we can share that love with others. That is the point here. And that is not duality consciousness. That is the opposite. That's unity consciousness. That is what love comes from. The ability to connect to the unity that we see. When we look at others and we see ourselves in them, that is what connects us to the reality that we are connected and we can grow together. That is the whole point, is growing together in oneness and unity. And that comes from our ability to appreciate, believe in, have faith on our connection to God. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. These are just some of the realizations that I've had this past week as I'm writing the second book. And I'll tell you, there's going to be a lot more. And again, thank you guys so much for being here. If you want to jump down and grab your Focus Your Frequency guide, it's free down there. I made it for you. I hope that you enjoy it. All around us are pieces of the gigantic cosmic puzzle. Let's attune to its frequency. This is Teresa Yanaros at Divine Frequency, signing off. Bye.